Hi friends, I'm Tammy K. Welcome to my channel. Today we're painting this simple vase of florals inspired by a reference photo that looks nothing like this, because that's what I like to do, just make my own version of it. We're going to be doing just 2 simple washes. We're not going to do a big detailed painting. Usually my florals take about 30 minutes or more. Today it's only 20. I know you can do it. Let's go ahead. I'll show you what to do. So friends, today we've got our Saunders Waterford watercolor paper. It is cotton, but use the paper you have. I've got paper towel for dabbing. My Winsor and Newton palette here, I'm spraying down. A lot of colors happening on here. I just picked this up, I just filled it up, and I'm really excited about the vibrance and the brilliance that we have. If you want to know what colors are in my palette, or if you want to check them out on Amazon, you can, in the description below. I'm just showing you right now some brushes I have. You could use this really large 16 round, you can use a flat brush, you can use a smaller brush. It really just depends on the feel that you want to go for today. I also have some smaller brushes here for details, and the particular one I'm using right now is a number 2 round brush. It's going to be great for this stamen. So I've got a nice really bright yellow color on my palette here. I'm just getting that mixed up with enough water to start with our middles. But before we do, let me show you what I'm working on here. So this is a reference photo that I got off of Instagram. It's just an inspiration photo, guys, but it doesn't mean that that is how I'm going to be painting this today. So I use it for placement and just for in general inspiration. So we're gonna start, there were 3 blooms in that photo that were that kind of making this triangular pattern. And so we're going to start with that. So this first one, it's a forward facing, front facing flower. And so I've got that nice little starburst. I've left some white of the paper in the middle just so we can fill in some other details later. So we're going to do a second one here on the lower section. I was going to say lower right, but it is just a smidge to the right of the middle. And so very similar little starburst happening here. I work quickly because I just like to paint loosely, and it helps me not to overthink too much. And now we're going to do a third one over here. I'm just following kind of that placement that the reference is giving me. And this is more of a side facing. When I say it's more of a side facing, it is a side facing peony. Did I mention peonies? They are a type of peony. And so it's a side facing one. We're gonna just have the center looking a little bit different. And then from there, we'll just start adding in our other flowers and just grow the composition from there. So I've got my number 8 round here. You could use a number 12. You know what? I'm gonna do number 12. Sometimes you just have to revisit, depending on how big you want your petals. So I'm going to start with that first one here. It is that center, that facing one. And so I want to make sure that I'm having a brush that is big enough that can give me those effortless, loose, big petals and not have to do more painting than I need to, or more brush strokes than I need to. So this is a very watery mix of pink that we're adding into this composition, and I'm just kind of scrubbing along. I'm really not worried too much about it. There is a layering of petals to these peonies, and so we might do 4 or 5 here, but then we're gonna add some more around that section. And when you do the details, you can start to bring out more of those petals, so it looks like there's a lot of layering. Don't worry too much about it. I always say it's that first layer, and so you're just going to block out the color essentially. Leave the rest of the details, although these flowers are not as detailed as my usual ones, but we're still going to do a second layer just to create that dimension and texture and all that stuff. As you're seeing here, I wanted to vary up the colors that we're using with these peonies because it's just going to make it more interesting. So instead of that pink, I have kind of this, it's a little bit of a purpley pink, almost a mauve color. Well, you can really see the mauve there. It's a bit brighter at that point, but I have such watery paint here, so I can't emphasize that enough. And I wanted to have the flower flipped a little bit, so we've got shorter petals on the bottom and longer ones on the top, which makes it look like the flower is tilted in some way. And now I'm using that beautiful bright yellow color for a third peony here, just a bit smaller, but it's also tucked behind that second one, so you're not going to see as many petals. I'm becoming more confident here, and I'm just kind of, gliding that brush around. I do like to make them pretty close together, so then you don't have to fill up that white space as much in between the larger focus blooms, or the blooms that are in focus, I should say. The focal points. So we are doing a few more stamen here. I want to add in, I think, 3 more to make 6 altogether. And so we're just going to nestle those in between the flowers that we have. And I am, again, roughly still following that reference photo. My colors are different. The placement is a little bit different. And then some of the filler flowers I'm going to put in will probably be different as well. And the vase is white in the original, but I'm not going to do a white vase. So now we're going to squiggle and scriggle on, kind of scrub on really, those petals. So this nice light purple we've got going on. Now, if you ever find yourself to be confused about the consistency of paint and, how much pigment to water to get certain results, I have a video that you might be interested in, and I will link it below. It is in my watercolor beginners series. There's actually five videos, so 5 parts of all of the secrets and things that I have learned over time in being a beginner. And I wanted to share those with you guys so you can watch the whole series if you just want to skip to the consistency of paint and kind of how to figure that out. I will link that as well as the whole playlist below for your perusal. All right, now I have this really pretty light kind of reddish brown color that I've added in, this lovely peony that's drooping down. Now I have left a lot of space for one reason, and I usually like to nestle things closer, but we want to see the stems. In this composition, you can see the stems kind of arcing down or to the side, and which is classic in a poppy, and in a peony, sure, why not? So that's why we have all that space and we're leaving it in. So now I'm mixing up my green here. My original intention was to start adding in the stems, and then I thought, you know what? Actually, let's go back with our number 12 round, because we do need to start adding in the filler flowers. If we start adding in stems and then we're trying to paint flowers around the stems, it just kind of it throws us off our game. So for me, I prefer to do the florals first and then the stems and leaves afterwards. So I've got a really nice kind of pinky red, and I am just quickly kind of scrubbing that on. I'm leaving a lot of white space. It's just reminding me of a carnation. And when I paint a carnation, there's this lovely laciness, with a carnation, and you leave a lot of white space, and you kind of twist and turn your brush to just create kind of that ripply floral look. So I'm not necessarily calling these carnations today, but it's what's inspiring the way I'm painting them. So you might ask yourself, where do you start putting in the filler flowers? And for me, I want your eye to just kind of bounce back and forth all across the page. Sometimes it's really attractive when you can do a zigzag pattern or an S curve, or I've even heard a C curve, and that can be really nice. There wasn't so much of a rhyme or reason for this today, except that I was trying to fill that open space. And here I did 3 so that we could just have a little bit kind of leaning down, a little bit of a hanging down of those florals, just like with the peony on the right. All right, guys, I'm going to connect everything with my number 2 round brush, some nice little stems, and they're poking out a little bit. It's just a bit of an, it's another asymmetrical type of painting, and that's okay. It's okay to make things in a way that sometimes feels uncomfortable. And if we're feeling uncomfortable with how we're painting, we're having to check in with ourselves and remind ourselves this is supposed to be fun. Checking in with yourself, guys. If you are liking this painting, please give it, or this video, I should say, give it a thumbs up, give it a like. And if you have not subscribed to my channel yet, please do. It really helps to get my videos out there and all the things. Guys, I picked an aqua color, and now I'm just sketching out with my paintbrush the shape of my vase. It's going to be a cute little whimsical vase, nothing much to it. And now I'm going to need to take some fresh water and basically just start spreading some of that color around. I'm using a little bit of the paint that's on my brush, but now spreading it out. Remember, I love to do transparent vases, and remember that when you have a transparent vase, it is picking up the colors around it. And so that's why We're leaving a lot of the white here, but then just adding in some of that aqua in different places. We're just gonna pretend that's where the reflections are. So guys, again, if you like the video too, I'm really curious. Let me know in comments what you think about it, what you like the best, or if you have a suggestion for what I can paint next. I'm always open to hearing from you guys. And see, I'm going to connect these flowers now that didn't have stems with some stems, and it's coming together quite nicely. We've got that first layer on, and now we're going to be able to start doing what I call the fun part soon. I'm going to start adding in my foliage. So I'm using the belly of the brush to create the shapes as I'm kind of thinking through, where do I put things? So boop, boop, and boop. There you go. Nice little stem of leaves. I like to do 3, and sometimes 5, just depending on how long I want them to be. Just a little bit of greenery here as I'm making my selection. I don't want to go crazy with it, but I do want to be intuitive and mindful when I'm putting in my foliage, and also wanting to leave a lot of white space around the bouquet for some splatter, because, you know, I am such a big fan of splatter. All right, taking our number 2 brush now. I'm gonna grab some brown. There's already some brown and some gray on my palette, and I'm gonna do a little stippling action, just those tiny little dots, little marks, to create the center of my peony. We have a lot of white space there. I don't want to leave it there. It's intentional. I want to cover up some of that and create some more texture and all the things. All right, so stippling is one of my favorite ways to add texture. It sounds really fancy, but as you can see, super easy to do. Now, the fun thing about when you go close up to your painting is sometimes you miss out on some of the things. But I'm just adding in here some nice shadow so that we can have our vase not just be floating out there in nature, but that is grounded on the table. Now here we are adding in some more details for this vase. You want to do this arc shape at the bottom so it looks like it is rounded at the bottom, and a little bit of a water line here. Don't worry too much if it's a little wonky like mine is. It's just going to add in a little bit of extra interest to your painting. I'm just taking a clean damp brush and just spreading it out a tad so it doesn't look too intensely like a stark line. And then you can take your brush and just start to add in if there's any places that you need to fill in your vase a little bit more. Darkening up this left side and some of the streaks there as well. And then I'm just going to take a clean damp brush with a little bit of paint and just paint it across those white spaces just to fill it in a little bit more. Now, once we have our stems in there, this is really, going to come together nicely. And what I'd like to do next is just go over that shadow line here, allowing it to darken up so that it really looks like the vase is in shadow, and then take a clean damp brush and spread out that paint. Let's do a little bit more of that spreading right here at the bottom. As you touch the paint with that wet paintbrush, that paint is going to spread downward and create just a nice diffusion of that color. So now this is my favorite part of painting, adding in that second layer of color. So I have a really nice, lovely medium value of pink here. And with my number 8 round, I'm just kind of going over that first layer and adding in some more kind of wonky petals actually. So if I add in that second layer, it's going to create this idea that there's some fullness, that the petals that are lighter are behind and the petals that are darker are more in front. And that's just the illusion that we can utilize when we're playing with value. And if you don't know, value is just the lightness and the darkness of a color. So now I'm mixing up a darker version of purple, and we're going to hit up these guys here on the side. So it's pretty simple what I'm doing. I'm just painting quite quickly so that I can just add in that second layer, and now you're going to start seeing that the flowers are going to start popping off the page and kind of coming to life. Now let's add in that beautiful kind of mauve-y color that I'm mixing up here. It's such a pretty flower there in front, and I almost hate to cover it with paint, but as I'm doing the second layer, I'm liking it even more. And if you just wanted to do one layer, you could totally do that for this bouquet if you feel that that's you just want to stop at that one layer, and that would be really pretty as well. But I do like to give a couple different values. Let's just go ahead and diffuse this a little bit with some clean water. Dab it on a paper towel if you need to, and you diffuse the lines. They're less harsh lines and much softer. So with the yellow, more concentrated version, and with yellow, it's hard to see that contrast. So if you go really light, you kind of have to go pretty thick and saturated to be able to see that second layer as its own thing. All right, and now we'll work with that brownish red, doing the same thing here. And you can see this bouquet is starting to come together. It's getting some life and personality, and has been just a pleasure to paint. So if you haven't liked the video yet, please do so, and I appreciate it so much. And I appreciate that you guys are watching this with me as well. Now see, this is something that happens to me. I start to paint something and I get more confidence, and then I just paint a lot faster, and that is just how it is, people. So if you're not feeling confident at first, just keep going. It'll start coming to you as your muscle memory kicks in and all the things. So we're gonna do the same thing with these lovely filler flowers. I do not want to cover up a lot of that white space. I really appreciate the white space. And you can see how doing this second layer of more concentrated red is just really pretty and really bringing out the personality on these flowers. This one in the middle here, it's a little bit wet, so I dipped in to the palette where I got really concentrated red and was able to make that stand out. If the flower is really wet, then you're not going to see the paint show up so much. Just a little thing to keep in mind as you are painting. All right, grabbing some of my sap green on my palette here, and we are going to end up doing those stems. So this is what makes it all come together, like I said, and I'm just kind of roughly putting in the amount of stems that I think I need here. Based on how many blooms, we've got those 6 blooms, and then some of those filler flowers that have various stems as well. And if you'd like, you can even change up the type of greens that you add in there, make some of them longer too, some of them shorter. And yeah, pretty simple, pretty easy. We've got this really easygoing, lovely jar of florals here. All right, so now I'm just going to do a little splatter, just tapping my brush that has some watery paint on it. And all of a sudden we have more magic that we have just created with all of this here. Now I have a little bit more of that navy, or the Payne's gray, which is that blue gray. And I'm just gonna darken up the centers to make them stand out a little bit more. So a little more of that stippling action for our loose peony florals here. Adding that in. All right, that looks pretty good. And then we're gonna grab some more concentrated sap green, because I need to connect these little leaves with stems and gotta make sure that they're not floating. So using my number 2 round just to give me some really thin marks. I just love that. And that's why I don't use the same brush that I used before, which was an 8 to make the leaves. I don't use that to make the stems. They're just gonna be too thick, too chunky. But a nice number 2 or even a 3 or a 1 works really great for this. A couple little more over there. Taking a look, making sure we didn't miss any. No, I think we're good. And so pretty good amount of white space in between things, just keeping it loose, keeping it airy. And I do want to darken up my shadow a little bit more with my Payne's gray. So we're just going to go along the bottom and do that. And you know, if you're looking at a cast shadow, which is what this is, you will notice the darkest part is right up against the object. Then taking a clean damp brush to spread it out. And it's all complete, guys. Well, friends, we have painted our florals, the simple florals, in a simple vase. I hope you enjoyed it, the discussion on various painting things. And make sure that if you liked the video, like the video, don't forget to subscribe. And remember, I'm on Patreon. So, link in the description, and I will see you guys later. Bye. Happy painting. Happy mental health.